Do you have a GoPro with you?
Yes. GoPro is shoot battery and stay on. Stay on. I don't know why. And power off and stay on and battery is the first day. Yes, it's possible. It's possible. I have a video on the first day. On the
Right. Hi there, everybody. I don't know who's here. 2 seconds. Let me see if I can share this link. Yeah, we're working and we are sort of live, just not on the original link. So I'm just waiting to see. We've got people coming in and joining.
Do you need the backdrop or not?
Now you can start taking that backdrop down. Right. Hi there, everybody. How are you? Welcome, somewhat belatedly, to the live stream here at the finish line. We've had quite a few technical issues as we've tried to get cameras to work and we've tried to get connections to work, and it's just all been a disaster. Now, I think there are some people waiting on the other line, so I am going to try and bring them over if we can. Let me see. Right, hang on. Okay, right, yeah. Hi there, John. Hi, Alex. Hi, Hapo in the sound trip. How are you all? We do have 6 people online, 5 people online. So we are live at the finishing line. As you can see, if I just quickly turn you around, everybody is starting to shut down. We're nearly finished, and so this is the first time I've done one of these. I've no idea how this is going to go, and clearly from the start we've just had, it's going to go quite badly. For just 5 or 10 minutes, and then with a bit of luck, we might see the Lanterne Rouge come across the finishing line later on in the show. Should be in about 45 minutes or so, and hopefully by that time we'll have lost the light, so that will be a good time to wrap up. Now, what I want to do on this is just cover off some of the questions that people have had for me over the course of the last couple of days. Lots of interesting questions come in. So if there's anybody watching live and you want to ask a question, then do stick it in the comments, which I can see over on my right here. So I'm just going to give it a few more minutes to see if anybody else wants to join live and make sure everybody knows on the other stream. Right, so questions coming in already, and thank you, John. Did the adventure live up to your expectations? And that's probably a good question to help me just set a little bit of the context around BikingMan Oman. This is now the 3rd running of the race, and it's my 3rd participation here. There's only 2 of us who've participated in every single BikingMan. And over the course of the 3 editions, the course has been slightly tweaked last year, but there were some major tweaks to it this year in terms of the route. And what that meant was we actually started 100 kilometers further back into Muscat, and with an extra 100 kilometers before we got to Jebel Shams, and an extra 1,000 meters of climbing before we get to Jebel Shams. And what that meant is we got to start and finish in the same place. So they cut about 20k or about an hour of riding off the end of the race. But like I say, that early stage became a lot harder. So, in terms of how this changed the experience and how this changed the adventure, and I know a lot of people have been asking the question about, how does this compare, is really what made this a much more challenging prospect. On paper, it was, very similar to previous years. 9,000 meters of climbing instead of 8,000 meters of climbing, 1,060k or 1,060k instead of, what for me last year was 970 or 980k. So on paper, very, very similar, but that 8 p.m. start meant that we were all riding through the first night, we're all riding on a real lack of sleep. And when you get to Jebel Shams and you've got, I think we hit the Jebel Shams climb having done the gravel shortcut with 370 kilometers in your legs. And just that increased level of fatigue made that first climb up Jebel Shams so difficult. First year, I rode all of it. Second year, I had to push a little bit of the gravel. This year, I had to push about half a kilometer of the tarmac and the same section of the gravel. But I think overall, most people were pushing up Jebel Shams. I even heard that Clem O'Mahony, who came fourth overall, he's former pro rider, really high level. Even he had to push up Jebel Shams, which is something that's never we've not seen before, where the lead riders are having to push up that climb. So yeah, did it live up to my expectations? Yeah, it did. It really created something that was super challenging. And yeah, Chris, hopefully that answers the question. So Chris has asked what made this harder from last year, and that's what really made it challenging. Now, follow up to that, Chris has asked about, did it change the end? So those couple of kickers at the end, we actually had those straight out of the start. So we didn't get rid of them. They just hurt a lot. Now, hopefully, I'm going to see if I can get Axel's attention over there. Axel, 5 minutes. So we're going to bring Axel in now. So probably the best person to answer the overall question about this new route is going to bring in race organizer Axel. So Axel,
how you doing?
I'm doing awesome, man. Congratulations. That's the third BikingMan Man finished, over with. A lot of questions coming in from people about the changes to the course, and a lot of feeling amongst the dot watchers and amongst the riders that it made it much more of a challenge. Did it create the challenge you expected it to create, or you hoped it would create?
I think it filled up the will to actually turn this entry-level race into a proper BikingMan race, because the past two editions we had a bit of free routing and options, and that was pretty hard to say whether this guy was faster or this woman was faster. Now everyone has the same route, same rules, and the night start, I think added some value to like the forecast and figure out who would actually take on the lead on this race.
So I think from my experience racing it, I really enjoyed the night start. I thought, I've never done a night start ride before. Done a lot of really early start rides, but the night start ride was a really special experience. And I think for me, what was cool was that everybody got to do that night ride, and everybody got to experience that kind of rush of riding through the night. But what's been the feedback? I guess what was the feedback before the race around that, and what's been the feedback now everybody's gone through it?
I think the first feedbacks we had, and the one that I received before the race, were people being scared of I've never done a night start before. I'll have to ride the entire night, so I don't know how I'm going to handle this, especially for the first timers.
Yeah.
And the second feedback we had from the experienced riders was my strategy was based on last year, and now I need to think about and rethink my strategy, because the night start, it's going to be, for me as an experienced rider, like 2 nights instead of 1. To actually complete the challenge in less than 48 hours. So I think it really created a new thinking on this event and added some spices that people were expecting. So
I certainly, from my perspective, having done this twice before, I did have to completely rethink my strategy. And not only did I have to rethink it going in, but I had to rethink it on the fly going through the day. As I kind of explained to everybody, the extra mileage and the extra climbing before you got to Shams made Shams a much more difficult prospect.
Oh yeah,
and there were a lot more people walking. I was saying, I even heard that Clem walked some of it.
Yeah, actually, we had 2 people that I heard about being able to actually ride almost the entire beast were Laurent and Clément.
Yeah,
they just walked maybe very tiny beats, but overall, it fulfilled as well a wish that I had to have people climbing the shams during the day.
Yeah.
And more people, because the first two editions, most people that were in the mid pack or at the end of the pack were not riding the shams during the day. And I think that with the night start and the gravel shortcut that became mandatory, more people managed to be at the shams during the day, even though they took maybe 5 to 8 hours to
Yeah.
climb the beast and end up walking at night. I was really surprised and astonished by the number of people that managed to actually ride the entire leg one. Which
Yes.
I mean, you raced lots of BikingMan races. What do you think about that first leg of 400
that first leg?
kilometers?
So for everybody, the first leg was 400 kilometers and 5,500 meters of climbing, which that's a really punchy first day. I've done a few races where you do that amount of climbing, but it's more compressed into 300, 350 kilometers. So doing that over 400 was really, really challenging. And I think I was genuinely quite amazed to see how many people took on the challenge of riding that 400 kilometers in a single go. This is not this is not an easy thing to undertake. It's tough. It's tough for those of us at the front end of the race, but for the mid pack to take on that challenge, it was amazing to see it happen, and amazing. Because I'm watching the dots as I go through the race. I look and I see what's happening. So, you see all these people arriving at the top of it, and it was an amazing to watch. But a lot of broken bodies, a lot of people pushing as I was kind of descending down off shams at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So do you think this course is going to then stick for next year?
Well, it's been 3 years.
Yeah.
And what we usually do every 3 years is that we try to change it. Man, it's pretty hard, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's very hard. The country for exploring it for 3 years in a row. It's pretty hard. I'd like to find maybe a new route and surprise people, but for now I don't have the answer. I think for now, over the 3 past years, that's one of the best course that we've reached. But I have some ideas and some spices that we can add.
That's going to be interesting, I think.
So we'll see. And I'd love to improve it and add some spices.
Even more spices than this year?
No, I don't think so. I think now it's, if we compare it to the other BikingMan events, now Oman is really being, looked at seriously. Like, you need to be very careful in terms of strategy, whether you want to lead the race or just survive it.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you're learning a lot. Like, people like you that are in the lead are learning a lot with the experience, as much as the people that are in the back, because they're doing something completely spectacular. Most people never rode their bicycle during the night, overnight.
Yeah.
And they were surprised that reaching the shams was actually doable. So, and I'm surprised about the time. The overall finishing time is pretty astonishing, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think the overall finishing time was 43 hours for the winner, which was just 4 or 5 hours slower than last year.
Correct. But with conditions that were a bit tougher, I think.
Yeah, so conditions, for everybody watching, conditions were really, really, really hard this year because of the heat, especially as you came down towards the coast and CP2. The heat was really quite oppressive. I saw 38, sometimes 40 degrees on my Garmin. So the heat was tough, and the wind was a major.
People were flying between CP1 to CP2 during the night. You were flying as well. I remember that shot that I had with you.
Yeah.
Before I reached on.
I need to go
Josh and Rodney.
I need to go and crunch the numbers and have a look and see what the timing difference was. But certainly last year it felt a lot easier to push on, go straight through the night.
Correct.
Whereas this year, because of the extra at the start, because of the ride through the first night, that's where your strategy had to change on the fly. And I very quickly switched from doing no sleep to getting 3 hours of sleep in a hotel to break the race in half. But I think we saw some very exciting racing this year. I think it was a lot closer than in previous years.
Yep.
And I think although ultimately Laurent was one of the clear favourites and had a very, very strong ride, he was pushed hard.
And too bad he's not here with us today, but I remember having a discussion before he flew back home. He had never been that pushed that hard by people. He told me he was harassed. especially by us. And
Yeah.
until 100K before the end, he told me that this guy was actually pushing me like in a sportive.
Yeah.
And murdering the pedals just to fake an attack and trying to lead. And
Really.
he told me it was relentless, relentless. And when it was not him at the beginning of the race, it was another one.
Yeah.
So Laurent, who's very experienced, I mean, he won twice Race across France.
Yeah.
So he's strong. And I've never seen someone like being able almost to avoid every stops.
Yeah.
Because he never stopped. He was carrying water and food for
Yeah.
the entire race.
Water and food.
Water was just the only thing that he had to buy.
Right, okay.
He didn't buy food
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
So he was carrying 5
Yeah.
kilos of food
Yeah.
and 5 liters of water.
Wow.
So I've never seen that. And,
Yeah.
and this guy was like, that's the toughest thing that I've ever done. Not because of the mileage, not because of the conditions, but because of the people that were hunting him.
Yeah.
And it was like high pressure.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that, that's kind of the level we're at here with a race like this, with it being 3 years in, is people are coming in with absolutely full on strategies for food throughout the whole race. They're not starting with some and thinking, well, I might stop here, or I might stop there. People know I'm going to do this and this and this. Even my race, I knew pretty accurately how much food I was starting with, how much I would need to buy en route, and where I would stop en route. I think just a comment from Chris here, who just says, "Can we have some more gravel, please, Alex?" Axel, yes. and Chris, I'm completely with you. For me, I want as much gravel as we can have, because that definitely plays to my strengths. I punched a little bit too hard up the first climb, but then when I settled down onto the road, I literally spent 8 hours just thinking, keep it easy, because I need to be able to push hard when I hit the gravel, because that's where I can regain places. And you know what, for me, that strategy really, really worked. I was behind Sergio, Darren and Guillaume, 3 super strong, super experienced ultra racers. And that's where I was able to catch and pass them. Guillaume then, for those of you watching Guillaume had an incredible race and then didn't sleep. So he's
it's when we talk about gravel in Oman, we are talking about super steep hills, very steep, very random terrain as well. Like, it can be rocky, it can be sandy, it can be dusty. And what happens is that the race, 1,000 kilometers, is mostly tarmac. So people are like, in terms of strategies, leaders, mid pack and survivors are thinking, okay, the gravel is very short, I'm gonna get the most aggressive configuration, like a TT bike, this guy Thomas, and the gravel will survive. And what they discover on site is that gravel is taxing and it's very hard. And I like the idea of bringing these people that are both from the road, segment, as much as people that are more from the gravel segment. If we turn out to feature more gravel, then we lose people like Thomas, that is riding the entire thing on the TT bike with tubular tires, which is ridiculous. Or Laurent, riding with 25 mil tires. Clément, riding 25 mil tires. He was literally, sliding with his bike in down. It was crazy to watch. It was really crazy.
Just so everyone's aware, I was on 35 mil tires, and I was able to ride super hard, super fast, and it was an incredible setup for me. So I think just one more question for you, Axel, because I know you've got to finish clearing up before we have the finishers party. Can this still be a race for people to come and experience ultra racing for the first time? Do you think you
I believe so. I mean, among the 80 participants on the starting line, we did have, as usual, on all BikingMan races, first timers that were literally for the first time in an ultra cycling race, and they managed to finish. I mean, the scratch rate that we had was a bit above the past 2 editions, but it was mostly linked to issues linked to the ultra cycling world, like mechanical issues, crash, things that happen on the road, but that are not necessarily linked directly to the challenge of the race. So I think it's still not an entry level, but it's doable for people that are looking at the ultra cycling world and are thinking maybe 4,000 kilometers race is a bit too long for me because it's too much commitment in terms of time. And we've seen people finishing that were literally first timers. I'm confident this is definitely not the easiest, because otherwise they'll murder me if they join. And the people listening will kill me if they join a BikingMan. There is no BikingMan, is it, man? You know it.
Yeah, yeah.
Every
absolutely.
conditions is different on all BikingMan, regardless of the distance and the elevation, and that's the beauty of it. Like, I mean, this year Oman was surprising. It surprised us all.
Yes.
With the heat.
Yeah.
Because a week before it was cold. 2 weeks before it was raining. And the entire Sultanate was green. And that's the first time we see shams.
It's the first time I've seen so much greenery around
Exactly.
on in the whole country. It was quite amazing to see all of that.
So yeah, I think it's you gotta be prepared for surprises. And,
Always.
But yeah, first timers are definitely welcome on this race for an epic experience. It's hard, but as much as all BikingMan races.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, Axel, thank you for talking to me, and
Thanks, man.
hopefully I'll see you here this time next year. BikingMan Man, number 4, and I will keep my record going. Okay. So yeah, thank you to Axel. You better crack on and clean up, and I will
Thank you everyone for
see you at the finishers
listening,
party.
sharing the questions. Cheers, and see you maybe on the BikingMan.
There we go. Right. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you to Axel. Just let me quickly whip through a few more questions that have come in. So Alex says, all points north started in the evening last year and it made for an interesting dynamic. Did you do anything to help yourself cope with the lack of sleep? Well, you know, as I said, my original strategy was to come in and do this just on kind of catnapping as we went through. And it very quickly became clear that this was racing a lot longer than normal. So, I did have to adapt my strategy on the fly. I think pre-race, what you do is you do as much as you can to rest, to relax. You know, you've probably got 10 hours awake before the start of the race. So you try and do as little as you can. You try and nap and sleep. And then, with 3 hours to go, you might have a good meal, and then with 2 hours to go, you might start having having caffeine, having coffee, something to get you ready and set up for the night. Now what I found was, so I rode through 3 nights of the race. The first night was absolutely fine, and it was an incredible experience because I've never ridden completely fresh going into the night. What I found then, going very early on, going into the second night, the sleep demons start to come pretty quickly. So that's the point where you have to be really good at risk assessment when you do these things. You have to understand when is it safe to push on, but when do you feel like I should be stopping and taking sleep. And so I texted my wife at about 8 o'clock going, I'm actually really tired, and if I try and push on tonight and then push on the next night, that could put me in a bit of a really bad situation. So that's how I then dealt with the sleep, and slept at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock and was then racing again at 1:30 on the Monday morning. And what that did was it did set me up well for the last night, where I didn't really struggle too much with sleep. A couple of times where I took a nap in a petrol station and then just on the floor outside some shop. And, I slept for 20 minutes and then 5 minutes, but that's just enough to allow you to keep pushing through. And eventually I finished as the sun came up. I think the net to kind of answer your question for you about what will he remember. I think he will remember that first night and just the people's faces coming up shams, because it was so much harder based on last year. So Tony says, did you stay up overnight the week or so before the race to not shock your system? Now I've talked about the best approach to this with a number of ultra cycling athletes, just to understand what people do. And I think we've all pretty much settled on the fact that you want to bank as much sleep as you can in the lead up to the race. So the only different thing I do is I try and just get more sleep than normal. I don't change when I sleep. I don't try and ride through the night or do anything through the night, because that's generally just going to create sleep issues, cause me a lack of sleep, and actually I'll be going into the race quite fatigued. If you're doing a race like this for the first time and you're going to have to race through the night, then it may be worthwhile practicing that. But obviously, as someone who's done 10 races now, racing through the night is something that you do pretty much at least once on every race. So it's something that we're quite experienced in. Are there any more questions coming in, or shall I see if I can bring in somebody else to have a quick chat to? Because I wanted to chat with Danny and Sophie. because they do have a very interesting story. So let me go and see if I can bring Danny and Sophie over, and we'll lead straight into the second interview. This might get a little bit loud for a second. Danny, Sophie, can I borrow you? You might need you might want to grab another chair. Let me move over a bit. We'll give you your 15 minutes of internet fame. Right, so hello. Right, so I'm joined by Darren and Sophie here, who live in the UK and are actually boyfriend and girlfriend. So they are partners. But I caught up with them both just before the race, and my first question was, "Oh, you're looking forward to racing this together?" To which, what was your response?
So we're not doing it together.
Yeah, so I think the first couple I've come across all these things who actually were racing each other, basically.
Yeah, but I would caveat that we weren't really racing each other because Danny is a hell of a lot faster than me.
Yeah, so Danny, let's start with you. I mean, you've come from a strong rowing background, so you probably have quite high levels of endurance fitness. But this was your first ultra cycling race.
Yeah, correct. So a lot of rowing, bit of triathlon, did an Ironman a few years ago as well. So kind of like some experience in longer stuff, but nothing this long. But I've done quite a lot of training in the past 6 months. I sort of expected myself to do well.
Yeah.
I hoped I would do well, but it was nice to actually sort of execute it and get to the finish line.
And you came sixth overall, seventh overall, and what was your finishing time?
51 hours.
Yeah,
13.
and was that in line with where you thought you would be at the start of the race?
I had a kind of vague goal to get under 50 hours, but I think with the conditions, with the heat and with the wind, it was just a little bit slower than I sort of thought it would be. So very happy with 51.
Yeah, no, I mean you can be. You certainly beat me. So well done on that one. Now, as I've just been talking about, racing through the night and how you kind of get used to racing through your night, and as an experienced ultra racer, it's something I've done quite a lot of. How did you find both the first night and then especially the second night, given that you didn't really sleep at all, did you?
No, so I had in my race plan, I planned on sleeping on the second night. And then when I was sitting around before the race with yourself and a few other guys who've done this before, and you were saying, anyone who comes high up doesn't really sleep.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, maybe I should reconsider my strategy here a bit. And then I just thought, okay, I'm just going to go. And if I feel really, really tired, I'll stop and sleep. And if I don't feel really tired, I'll just keep going. And I'll just play it by feel.
And did you have to stop at all and just have a quick nap, or were you able to push all the way through?
About 2 a.m. on the second night, I went into a bus stop and shut my eyes for about 15 minutes.
Yeah. Didn't
sleep, but just had a little relax.
Yeah.
And then when I got back on the road, I felt better, felt pretty fresh, and then powered on through.
Now the important question is, did you hallucinate at all?
A little bit. I mean, I wouldn't say like I hallucinated, but things started to look like animals. There's a few giant rabbits and tortoises and that kind of thing. But I mean, it was obviously a tree that was the shape of something. I wasn't,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was like super realistic or anything like that.
So I saw Pinocchio as I was coming down the last gravel section. I saw Pinocchio, which was a very, very interesting experience. Well, look, I mean, amazing race. But then, let me come to you, Sophie. So you're obviously, that, Danny's there racing away and he's going to push through the night, not get any sleep. Now I know that, my wife usually sits there and dot watches and can keep an eye on what's going on. How did you manage that when, were you looking out for him? Were you looking out for her? Did you both deal with that dynamic of worrying about the other one whilst you're both trying to execute your own races?
I mean, to be honest, I don't think I was that worried about my own race. I just kind of wanted to complete it. So I was very much just watching Danny, and I did that quite a lot. My brother also phoned me a little bit, and that was really good because I'd be like, "What's Danny doing? Where is he? Is he okay?" When Danny was quite close to finishing, I actually stopped as well.
Right. Okay.
I wanted to know that he'd got there, kind of thing, and that was probably one of my lowest points as well, because I really wanted to be there, here at the finish line with him celebrating. I was like, I just want to be there now.
Yeah.
So that bit was a bit of a weird dynamic, but otherwise it was okay. It was also, I got to see Danny when he was coming down the Jebel Shams as I was just about to go off it, so that was really nice.
Cool. And then on to your race itself. because that's the more important thing. How did you find the race? Because, you know, from talking to you both beforehand, you know, this was something that you wanted to do. You know, Danny, you were like, I'm going to go and do this ultra race. Yeah, this is going to be great. You know, you can come along and sit by the pool. And your response was, no, I'm going to come and race. Did you understand what you'd kind of signed up for?
Probably not in hindsight.
and did
I think, just kind of for background. So Danny has done a lot of sport and a lot of like endurance thing. I really haven't. I think actually we were saying earlier, I think my longest cycle before this was about 110k. So
okay,
so a bit of off-road though, an off-road to Brighton.
Yeah, that's true. A little bit of off-road. So probably slightly different sporting backgrounds. Like I always used to skip PE at school. Like I wasn't.
Well, that's you know, to come from doing just 110 k's your longest ride to doing this, where you know we were just talking to. I was just talking to Axel, and basically your day one was 400 kilometers.
Yeah.
With 5,500 meters of climbing.
Yeah.
Do you now? Does me saying those figures to you make you think, wow, what about you? That really gives me a sense of achievement.
Yeah, it does definitely. I think for me, I was just quite determined. I was just like, well, if Danny can do it, why can't I?
Right, and that so much of this is about mindset, and clearly you had that right mindset going in. Now, did you do any overnight riding?
Yes, so actually quite a lot, and more than I thought I was going to. So my plan was to always go up to the top of Jebel Shams, so do one night and then sort of get to the Jebel Shams like in the evening, sort of thing of the second day, and sleep, and then sort of have my days and nights in sync. However, I actually found cycling during the day in the heat really tough. Like I really suffered with the heat, and also with the traffic as well being so much worse. So I preferred the night, which I didn't expect at all. So actually, when I got to checkpoint 2 and I got there in the morning, like 9 a.m, I actually stayed there during the whole day. Basically, I set off at like 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So I missed the heat, and I just rode through the night again to get here to the finish line in the morning. But that was kind of, that worked out so well for me because I didn't get the headwind that everyone else has been complaining about. I didn't get the heat, and I didn't get the awful traffic. It
sounds like you raced a very experienced and sensible race. Did you hallucinate?
No, I think at one point when I was going up Jebel Shams, so that was like a long time in, like slight sort of funny shapes again, but they were just bushes. And at one point I don't know why I did this, but I looped my helmet over my tri-bars, and the light was shining through my helmet, so I was getting very weird shapes
as you were walking up Shams. Right, okay, so self-created hallucinations there.
But if anything, they were quite entertaining. I was like, oh, that one looks like this.
fantastic. Would you come back and do one again? Or not necessarily here, but you know, is this giving you the bug to do more ultra racing?
We were just kind of talking about that a bit, weren't we? Like, I don't think I'd do Oman again, but I don't know, maybe some.
The phrase "next time" was used earlier.
I think that means we've got so Nanette's here saying, "Holy dooly, you are impressive so far." So I completely agree. You know, I because I've taken a lot of people into the first steps in ultra racing. That's an impressive start. Now, just question for you: a lot of what we're trying to do in ultra racing, a lot of what organisers are trying to do, is really encourage female participation. You know, we've seen with the likes of Fiona Kolbinger and Leo Wilcox that women can be competitive at the very, very sharp end, and they can win some of the biggest races. What would you do to encourage women to just come and take part? Because you've turned up, you've raced, you've had a great time, you've got around safely, and you've raced really, really well. How could you, what words of advice would you give people?
I think just kind of go in with the mindset that it can be done. I think that's a big part of it, and just sort of tick through it. Like, I don't think it's not like a science. It's not like something you can necessarily like give someone a formula and they can learn it and do it. It's just do your research and get on and just try it.
Awesome. Awesome. And Danny, what's going to be next for you now? Because you've made a really impressive debut. Any future plans?
Nothing for sure yet. Maybe a few slightly shorter races in the UK, just stuff you can do in the weekends. But I'll need to look at the calendar and see what will fit in.
Well, I am.
Not that I have any holidays left, so
I am sure I will see you on the start line of one of these things very soon, and I hope we'll see you on the start line of one of these.
We
things
did actually mention, rather than going from being a couple and doing 2 solos, maybe doing a pair on a tandem.
Okay, so you heard it here. They're going to do it as a pair on a tandem. So yeah, I definitely am looking forward to that because I think that would be very interesting to watch. Okay, well, look, thank you for giving me some of your time, and it was amazing to just meet with you both this week and hear your stories and race with you, and yeah, congratulations to both of you. All right, cool. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Right. Now, I was hopefully going to also have a chat with Lisa Dunn, who was the ladies' winner overall, but I can't see her around just yet. No. So never mind. Right. Anyway, we have been talking for quite some time now. Yeah, just to kind of quickly, wrap up on my race and my experience here. This was my 3rd time. I wasn't expecting this to be as different as it was in the end. I expected this to be very similar to the other 2 BikingMan events here in Oman, but actually what we got was a very, very different experience, and I think it's really has changed into a better race. I think, seeing someone like Sophie come here and be able to ride 400 kilometers and 5,500 meters of climbing, which was her longest ride by 3 times, that will be an achievement that her and many of the others will always have, because it was just a fantastic achievement. It made the racing much more strategic and much, much harder. You were always thinking about what were the people around you doing? Where do I put my stops in? How much sleep can I get away with taking? So, I think overall for me, this really was a positive change to the race. I love the night start. The extra distance made it really hard going up Jebel Shams, and I certainly think it gives a lot of thought. If it is a similar route next year, there's a lot of more thought around how do you pace this and how do you develop your strategy. I then did, like I say, I did take some sleep on the kind of after 24 hours. After 24 hours, I slept for 3 hours and then rode 27 hours straight. So, in my reflecting on this race, I think I raced it as well as I could. One of the key things that I was looking at was how did I respond, having very recently done Rwanda. And I think on balance, whilst I was physically recovered or physiologically recovered and my numbers were really good, what I hadn't really allowed for was enough sleep recovery since Oman. I think 2.5 weeks is not enough time to properly recover all of your sleep. And also I think it's not enough time just to allow the general wear and tear on your body to recover properly. I suffered more than I normally do with knee pain on this ride, and I think that was down to the lack of a full recovery since Rwanda. However, I am really, really glad I came and raced, because with all of these you learn more. Every time I race, I learn more about how to execute, how to do better at these races. What makes you faster, what makes you slower. So overall this was absolutely a mind-blowing experience that I really, really enjoyed. And kind of just Tony, to your question, how was the new pump? Well, it did get used in anger. I did, as I hit the last gravel section, I had a bent valve on the front tire, so I couldn't let that one down, but I could let the rear down. And what I did was I just hit a sharp rock with the front tire. There was no give, so it put a large hole in the sidewall of the tire, which struggled to seal. And so Dynaplug out, plugged the hole, out came the Bluetooth pump, up it went. Absolutely superb. So yeah, I think kit wise that really showed itself to be worthwhile and was really, really good. Second race with the tail fin, which was also excellent. The more I use the tail fin, the more I really think it's a fantastic solution for this kind of racing. It's so easy to use, especially here where you're rattling over a lot of gravel downhill really, really fast. Like you come down off the shortcut, you come down off Shams at some serious pace if you're pushing on, and this thing just doesn't move. So yeah, overall the kit was really, really solid. So that's now, you know, a wrap on that race. I was really pleased with 10th overall. Looking at the field coming into this race, I knew that top 10 was going to be a really, really hard ask, because there's some top quality athletes here. And I think, you know, to race hard, to get by on just 3 hours of sleep in 58 hours of racing, to race as hard as I did through certain key phases was really good. But above all, it was great to just be here and meet up with some great old friends, and to meet new faces here in the world of ultra racing, and to have a good tight race. So yeah, really, really pleased. Now, if anybody wants to pop any more questions in, do so now. Otherwise, as this light is fading, I am going to say goodbye. Do send feedback on how you found this kind of post-race wrap-up. Do you enjoy this format? Was it good to bring people in to talk to? Was it good to get Axel in for an interview? Was it interesting to see some of the other racers and see what their thoughts on the ride were? So yeah, if you enjoyed this, then do let me know. Leave that feedback, and we can then iterate this for the next race I'm going to be at. Not going to be ultra racing for a while. My next race is going to be the Dirty Reaver, which is a 200-kilometer one-day gravel race in the north of England, which will be in April the 28th. So that is my next race, which I'm really, really looking forward to. And then it's all eyes on Transcontinental number 8. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all on one of these very, very soon. Thank you.